Thank you.
Thobela Tameng. Let me start by greeting our principal and Vice Chancellor, Professor Puleng Linkabula. She would have loved to be here. However, she's got another meeting to attend to. Our TG, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, our Deputy Minister, Dr. Rejaina Mahaule. You chose us as an institution for you to come and sit here and have this conversation. Colleagues, you are welcome here, but we want to go back because you've chosen an institution of higher education to come and discuss all this information that we have. We, as an institution of higher education, might start complaining, or we usually complain in January and February when the basic education minister starts speaking about the numbers, and we feel that we have been brought students that are not ready. However, in the same manner, the basic education minister might be feeling the same way when our children go to school. Because previously, when children went to school, they already knew how to read, they already knew how to count. They might not know how to write, but counting, colleagues, 1 up to 10, our children know. We do not know where it goes wrong when they get to school, because children start counting numbers long before they know the alphabet. So what are we doing wrong in our families? What is it that we can do to help our ministers? We are here today to talk about the Basic Education Laws Act, but let us also go back into our families and move away from having these small families that we want. We chase away our mothers-in-law, and we don't want burahadi to come and assist in the families. In Sweden, when a woman gets pregnant and goes on maternity leave, the government gives them 2 years of maternity leave and an amount of more than 200,000 rands. And this is because women there are not bearing children. But as Africans, we cannot afford that. We need to grow our families. We need to grow our heirs and kings and queens. But we need to take care of each other. Let us go back to our traditions of having our big families and living together and not separating ourselves. I am the executive dean in the College of Economic and Management Sciences, and it makes sense to me to have all of us living under one roof. In Gauteng, everything is expensive. But if we all come together and live in the same spaces and stop running away when we turn 18, the youth, when we turn 21 and running out of the house, it cannot happen. Let us all come together as Africans, reunite our families, rekindle our kingdoms, and in that way, we can be able to assist our ministers. Welcome to the University of South Africa, the University of the Land, the university that opens doors, not only doors, but windows as well. But we also break down walls, and this is the walls I want to talk about. The walls that we have built to keep away some of our family members. Let's build those bridges so that those who are on the other side of the river can come along. Let's build those bridges so that everyone, even those who don't have access, can come in. What stuck out for us as a university was that grade R will be compulsory for all learners who are less than 5 years, and every child should have come to school. And we have a department in the university, early childhood development, and we will ensure that it grows bigger so that our children can know how to read and write before they go to school. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor Maschaba. Yes, the door of learning shall be open for all. We really want to thank you. And I'm just checking now in our program. Can you actually flight our program if ever you've got please, now we are going to have our Deputy Minister Dr. Regina Mahaule, who is going to speak about leading education, researcher in policy on the BELA Act. Can we get the Deputy Minister? The Deputy Minister, she cannot be with us today. The reason is because they are debating the SONA this afternoon. So she was supposed to be with us, but she said that as a responsible, accountable citizen, then she will be able to do it through the screening. I thank you. And we are also on YouTube. And can you also flag the YouTube so that we can be able to send it to even our other people? Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, Dr. Mahaule. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. If we can come, we can hear what you are saying. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm audible from my side.
Yes, Deputy
I'm
Minister.
here with you, yes. Thank you so much, from Director, my sister, Debbie Raputi Tibora. Greetings to the Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Dr. Gwen Ramaphosa, the representative from SACU, Dr. Matsipe, and NAPTOSA Executive Director, and Prof. Mpine Makwe from Unisa, Prof. Masichaba, Prof. Kidiboni Paho, Ms. Tulingwenya, the South African Council of Churches, because I'm told by you, Program Director, that the South African Council of Churches is here, representatives from public entities, labor organization, school governing body associations, the Department of Basic Education. And ladies and gentlemen, I know there are so many stakeholders represented there. I may not count you all. We all know that without the BELA Act, education in South Africa would not have been totally transformed. With the South African Schools Act, we tried to transform education to come up with one education system in South Africa, but there were gaps which were addressed by this BELA, and those who were enjoying those gaps are the ones that might feel that the Act is taking away their privileges, which is not the case, because we have one South Africa and we need to live as one nation. That's what this Act seeks to address. So I want to thank you for your attention as we explore this significant milestone in South African education system, the Basic Education Law Amendment Act, as the cornerstone of our ongoing efforts to ensure equitable, inclusive, and transformative education. The BELA Act represents a legislative journey spanning 3 administrations. It started with the 4th, 5th, and the 6th administration, if I may say. But on the 10th of January 2022, our former minister, Me-Enji Motshekga, formally introduced the draft to Parliament. This moment marked a critical step forward in an extended process of legislative reform aimed at addressing enduring administrative challenges and advancing the transformation agenda within the education system. The Basic Education Law Amendment Act 32 of 2024 amends critical sections of the South African Schools Act 84 of 1996. It serves as a response to contemporary challenges faced by South African schools, aligning with the evolution needs of the communities and the imperatives of case law. We all know that we have gone to court so many times, and the courts said, go clean your house. And this is how the house was cleaned, that HODs don't have powers. They were said, and now you're taking the SGP. The SGP, when we need a school, we go to the head of department. We don't go to the SGP. But these two must work together. So among the significant provisions introduced by this act are the introduction of grade R. Remember, the Constitution allowed education to start from grade 1, which is compulsory education in South Africa, grade 1. Grade R was excluded. So this act now is bringing grade R, regulation of learner attendance, revised code of conduct for learners, provision for homeschooling, a rationalization of schools, abolition of corporal punishment and initiations, language and admission policy reforms, and criminalization of school disruptions. One of the most notable changes involving granting the head of department authority to intervene in the development of language and admission policies, which is one thing some of our colleagues and partners in education feel like, no, HOD must not have. What kind of a system? Because the head of the department is the ultimate employer in any province, and is the one who provides schools, is the one who does all these things. So the argument is that the head of department must not intervene in the language policy of a school, yet is the one who must ensure that she complies with the provisions of the Constitution on compulsory education in this country. This intervention aims not to diminish the role of the SGPs, but to ensure that these policies align with national legislation and constitutional principles. The BELA Act aims to enhance access to education by removing barriers to prevent learners from being admitted to schools based on race, color, religion, scholastic ability, or sporting talent. Provincial education departments, program director, are the ones that are providing education in any system in South Africa. So they must make sure that education is accessible in any province. So beyond facilitating access, the BELA also prioritize learner retention mechanisms, and that mechanisms are introduced to monitor attendance, eliminate disruptions, and uphold stability in the schooling environment. This holistic approach underscores the commitment to creating an inclusive and equitable education system that serves all South African learners in our country. So, Program Director, in addition to addressing the access, the BELA Act seeks to improve governance within schools. It mandates school governing bodies to actively consult with parents on critical matters such as the code of conduct and financial decisions. This requirement fosters transparency, strengthens accountability, ensures that the voices of parents and guardians are integral to school management. The Act reflects as a shift towards, oh my God, yes. The Act as a shift toward participatory governance, which is essential for fostering trust and collaboration between schools and their communities. The mandate of the head of department to intervene is rooted in ensuring compliance with the law rather than stripping the SGP powers. They are a legitimate authority in terms of the South African Schools Act. Schools governing bodies play a pivotal role in determining school policies. However, in a democratic and sovereign state, public schools as institutions serving diverse communities must reflect the constitutional values of equality and non-discrimination. Unlimited powers and or unchecked powers could subject the sector to courts on daily basis like it used to happen in the past. Instead, SGPs should be overseers that the implemented legislations are applied accordingly to the interest of learners in schools. Critically, Section 30 and 31 of the Constitution affirm that cultural and linguistic rights must be exercised in ways that promote inclusivity and do not marginalize minority groups. While these provisions protect diversity, they also compel us to address inequalities and that persist in the education system. 3 decades into South Africa's democracy, many schools still reflect divisions along racial, ethnic, and linguistic lines. Historical policies that designated schools for specific ethnic groups continue to limit access for learners from mixed communities. For example, language and admission policies have at times been manipulated to exclude learners based on race, socioeconomic status, and other factors. Mother tongue education is underpinned in the Constitution, in the Constitution, effect becomes a reality for every South African learner. Transformation in education is neither simple nor uncontested. However, it's very essential. The BELA Act further seeks to dismantle barriers to access and create equitable education opportunities across all forms of schooling, whether public, independent, or home-based. By aligning education laws with constitutional principles, we uphold the equitable education for all, regardless of background or circumstances. As senior managers, our role is pivotal in ensuring the implementation of this legislation, as the minister indicated when she debated the State of the Nation address, that her responsibility is to implement what the president has signed, and she was applauded for that. This requires collaboration, accountability, and a shared commitment to the principles enshrined in our Constitution. Transformation is challenging, Program Director, but its success is vital for building a more inclusive and prosperous South Africa. On September the 13th, 2024, it was on a Friday. Normally they say Friday the 13th is another day. The President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, enacted the BELA bill into law while postponing Section 4 and 5 for additional discussions regarding their constitutionality. Following the planned discussions, the act was completely signed into law and now is enforceable because it gave people an opportunity to come up with a tangible objections and recommendations that will take South Africa forward. Instead, we saw something else. Instead of people bringing those recommendations to the president, that's why President continued to sign. Subsequently, Section 39 of the Act grants the minister the authority to establish a particular regulations to facilitate the implementation process. In this context, the draft mitigating regulations will be taken into account while developing the departmental guidelines on both sections 4 and 5, because the 2 sections are key to the BELA Act. The Minister of Basic Education has now released the guidelines, and we are consulting with stakeholders. The HEDCOM, which is the committee headed by our HOD, has accepted the guidelines and is now awaiting approval from the Council of Education Ministers, which will sit very soon. The department has formed a task team that involves all the stakeholders, including unions, SGPs, and principals, and they have begun addressing those regulations with a deadline set for June. In addition to the Act being fully operational, we have not encountered any difficulty whatsoever. We heard, of course, in other quarters, people saying it will take more than 2 years. We don't know where do they take that from to say, this thing will not happen anytime soon. But as far as the plans from the department, it will happen very soon. The BELA Act, Chair, as I conclude, embodies the next phase in the transformation of the education system in South Africa. Its implementation demands vigilance and a firm resolve to confront inequalities and that undermine the democratic values upon which our nation was founded. Together, as custodians of our education system, let us embrace the difficult but necessary work of transformation to secure a better South Africa. I believe that together we'll win on this and will take South Africa forward. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you so much, our Honorable Deputy Minister, Dr. Regina Makhabu. That is another name, Mahaule. We really want to thank you for trying actually to explain what does this BELA Act entails. What is important is dismantling some barriers and in the education system. And what is important to what she said, the Section 4 and Section 5 in that in the Act, I think that is the one that we have to be able to interrogate, and we should be able to understand what does it entails. And she said that the guidelines are there, and we actually, welcome. We actually want that if we can be able to unpack, and we must be able to be instrumental as citizen, progressive citizen in that regard. In this beautiful South Africa we love. We really want to thank our Deputy Minister, Dr. Makhabu Regina Mhaule, for being with us, but we wanted you physically. Yes, these things of ITs, whatever, they're not, I don't like them, I'm sorry. We want to see you, we want to feel you, and really, but thank you for availing yourself. Thank you so much. And in the program, we are going to have the program. In a program, I don't have my technology, my phone is dead. Lerato. But I think probably while we are still looking for the program, you are trying actually to internalize and try to understand as educators, as the principal. But I want to make this thing, upfront. Dr. Gwen said that I don't want to disrupt any school. That is what she said. And I believe that we are responsible, responsive teachers, that you didn't abandon your responsibility at school. And when I engaged with Ntate Ndlovu, he said that no, there is no any disruption. Most of the principals in the schools, they are managers and they delegate. As a manager, you delegate, and we don't want people going out there talking other things, saying that no, the schools are being disrupted. So most of the people are here are some of the principals that actually delegated their functions to their other deputies. We really want to thank you. And in the program, we are going to call the young person. We want to hear from the young person. The person who was supposed to speak was Tolingwenya. However, now we are going to be represented by one of our youth forum, very vibrant, Me Kamo. We want to hear from the youth perspective, or what are they going to do with this BELA Act, opening, ensuring that there are no barriers in education, as the Constitution of our Republic of South Africa says. Thank you, our young person. Can you give a hand of applause, please?
Part of our responsibilities is also to fundraise, and as I'm having challenges here with this laptop, I think I should lobby the house to help me fundraise for a nice iPad so that I don't get challenges here. Our program director, esteemed guests, let me stand on the established protocols, also recognizing the first woman elected Treasurer General, Dr. Gwen Ramaphosa, a leader that upholds the words of the former president, late President Owar Tambo, which I quote, "The children of any nation are its future. A country, a movement, a person that does not value its youth and children does not deserve its future." This is how some of us will and forever remember you, Dr. Gwen Ramaphosa. We meet today to deepen the discussions on the Basic Education Laws Amendment, known as the BELA Act, and drive the position of young people on the matter. I would just like to first make just a prologue, and it reads that the signing of the Basic Education Law Amendment marks yet another milestone in the majority governing party post-apartheid era, advancing its transformative agenda and reversing the colonial and apartheid legacy. The BELA bill is designed to reform certain aspects of how schools function. This legislation will have a significant impact on parents, children, and broader educational systems. This bill aims to ensure full access to education regardless of the language or demographics. As we celebrate 70 years of the Freedom Charter, one will borrow from it, as it quotes, "All national groups shall have equal rights. There shall be equal status in the bodies of state, in the courts and in the schools of all national groups and races. All people shall have equal rights to use their own languages and develop their own folk, culture, and customs." This act on its own is a significant step in advancing transformation, improving inclusivity, and addressing long-standing inequalities in the South African educational system. Amongst the key aspects of the BELA Act bill is its reinforcement of the ANC and the ANC Youth League policies on education. The ANC Youth League 1948 basic policies emphasized that everyone, regardless of nationality, should have access to the educational system. Furthermore, this bill affirms that the struggle of the 1976 generation was not in vain. As we pursue a future where every learner has equal access to quality education, we believe that the BELA Act is essential to dismantling the institutional barriers that continue to drive our society along economic, racial, and social lines. Education is a fundamental right, and no child should be denied this right due to restrictive or discriminatory policies. The bill itself advocates for the following. We just broke it down in two parts. One is transforming education and inclusivity. This speaks to strengthening of the governing bodies, which is the SGBs, through the bill's efforts to democratize decision-making in schools. While SGBs are vital to school governance, the BELA bill ensures that these bodies operate fairly and prevent the misuse of power that can perpetuate inequality. It places responsibility on school governing bodies to uphold inclusivity rather than serve narrow interest. Through the BELA bill, schools' admission policies will become a collective effort that ensures fairness, accessibility, and opportunities for all learners. The second point is the language policy and diversity. Language is a virtual tool for driving transformation as it directly influences access to resource. This bill responds directly to this as it seeks to transform the language system. This is particularly significant in a nation where Afrikaans and English are official languages, despite these languages representing 10% of the South African population. The bill addresses the role of language in fostering equitable access to resource within institutions of higher learning and the workplace, therefore promoting inclusivity. We applaud Section 4 and 5 of the bill, which regulates the language of instruction in schools and the schools' admission policies. The legislation empowers schools to develop and choose their languages of instruction from the South African 11 official languages. Most importantly, it grants the National Department of Basic Education the final authority, enabling it to override any decisions to ensure alignment with the national policy objectives. We further welcome the bill's measure on language policies which aim to ensure that no learner is excluded from a school based on language. In some instances, language has been used as a barrier to deny learners access to education. The bill empowers the department to intervene when language policies are weaponized against learners, thereby promoting a linguistic diversity and fostering nation building. One would speak of what would be the issues that would hinder the bill and the bill's implementation. We have a responsibility as a nation and young people in general to dispel the narrative that the BELA bill infringes on parental rights or undermines community involvement in the bill. It is clear that it is a prioritization of learners' rights while maintaining the role of parents and communities in sharpening educational environments. It is a balanced approach that prioritizes the protection of learners in the pursuit of a progressive, inclusive society. Furthermore, we need to educate, or rather bring awareness to young people that any group that is opposed to this bill reflects a refusal to let go of exclusionary practices that perpetuates division and enforces a status quo that serves only a few, a status quo that privileges specific communities at the expense of a national unity and a vision of a transformed South Africa. Contrary to the misrepresentations by certain groups, the BELA bill is not an attack to a school autonomy, but is the necessary intervention to ensure that all schools uphold its constitutional values as a non-discriminatory, equal, and the best interest of every child. Our education system has for far too long allowed disparities and exclusions practices to persist, which have historically marginalized learners from disadvantaged families. As I conclude, I think it's important for us to note that the BELA bill introduces long overdue reforms, including increased community participation in school governing bodies, equitable language policies, and the expansion of rights of all learners to enjoy a safe, affirming educational environment. By addressing these deep-rooted inequalities in education, we can unlock a full potential of our youth and secure a shared prosperous future for the nation. We applaud the government led by President Cyril Ramaphosa by taking this critical step towards realizing an educational environment that upholds the constitutional values, promotes social cohesion, and allows our youth to succeed in a fair and inclusive society. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a younger. You heard I think you were taking notes what the youth perspective said. Thank you very much, Mayor Oskamo, a very vibrant young person, Limutuile, and she said that her other role is to fundraise, and she wants a nice a laptop, iPad. Thank you very much. That was so good. You know, the young perspective of the youth. She actually spoke about Section 4 and Section 5. And really, we have to unpack what does it entails, that section, which even the minister have said, especially on the issues of the guidelines. We need all of us holistically so that we can be able to tackle those sections. And when I was having some engagement with the former MEC of Education, Professor Mary Metcalf, she said that the person who can also be instrumental in that and who can be able to guide us, it was Ntate James Ndlebe, who is also part of us today from the Department of Education. We really welcome you, especially being recommended by Professor Mary Metcalf. We thank you, especially in that section, Section 4, Section 5, the guidelines. We need progressive citizens to engage in that. We thank you. In the program, we are going to have a professor. Prof, tell us whether, from your perspective as on issues of governance, on the issues of ethics, what do you say? Thank you very much. You are welcome. Can you give him a hand of applause? Thank you.
Okay, good morning, colleagues, and I'm also going to stand on the established protocol. Meraputi, thank you so much for the invitation. It's very humbling, colleagues, to find this kind of arrangement and interest. I am actually overwhelmed. I thought it was just going to be, 5, 10 people. So this is. It is indeed a national conversation, which I think is quite important to have. I worked at Unisa at some point, and it was quite fascinating to come here and see Winnie Madikizela Mandela, because I think around 2011, she was here, and I met her for the very first time in this building, because it was during graduation. So I think one of her grandchildren was graduating on that night, that I was also graduating the students. So it was, I was taken aback coming here and looking at this. Colleagues, I was asked to talk about the questions of governance. So I framed this BELA Act and the governance implications. So I work for Northwest University. Currently, I'm director for the School of Government Studies. So we teach issues of governance, municipal government, politics, and so on. This is the outline, and I'm not going to dwell a lot on the... Oh, okay, so I must come closer. Goodness. Okay, so I'm not going to dwell much, colleagues, on the policy framework regime for BELA because I think my predecessors, the first two speakers, the Deputy Minister and the young people, have actually spoken about the policy issues. And of course, the important part would be the issue of where we are now, what this culmination means in terms of our policy landscape. And of course, as an academic, I want to find a world view and a perspective. And I think many of the debates that we have around a lot of our policies, including BELA, do not really encapsulate a very proper world view. And because South Africa is a diverse kind of a society, I always believe that the Constitution should be our world view, which we normally don't use as a point of departure. And then, of course, my own views with regard to the key considerations for how we should think around its BELA implementations. But of course, as you know, that there are very serious dynamics in the government of national unity. So I don't want to dwell much because, as I said, the Deputy Minister has spoken to the issue of the policies and how BELA came about. But I think it's quite important as South Africans to remember that we live in a constitutional democracy. So every bill, every act has to pass this muster. So if the act somehow passes the muster and we still don't agree, it means that we need to find other platforms that we can use to reflect more deeply about the kind of society we want to establish. So this is part of our Bill of Rights, and of course it was carried through for several years, as far back as 1996 by the South African Schools Act. There are a lot of amendments if you look into that act. But you will also remember that there are a range of policies that came about for many years to try and make sure that the education landscape in South Africa is regulated. It's been a very interesting trajectory for government, but also for communities in South Africa because, and I think you will agree with me, the executive dean was saying that we have a challenge in the universities, that the kind of learners that come into the universities, we struggle. And there has been a lot of interventions from the university side. In some cases, there are even extended programs. And they actually speak to the problem that we experience in our basic schooling system. So it really tells us that there has to be interventions that are targeted and that are very intentional. So the issue about the norms and standards, even for funding, but there's a very interesting document that came from the Human Rights Commission that talks about the Charter for Children's Basic Education, which was released a while back in 2012. And I think we should really pay attention to this kind of discourses because they help shape the landscape. So we don't come up with a conversation. We have a tendency, especially now with the world of social media, that something just flares up and it disappears. But policies cannot just flare up and disappear. They need follow-ups. They need to be shaped in the way that can eventually bring the society to what we want to see. And of course, the Deputy Minister spoke quite extensively on the contents of the BELA Act itself. So essentially what you will see in the BELA is that it's trying to bring all these other past laws and try to make sense on how we should put a future education trajectory for South Africa. So it's quite important that we are having all these discussions, and thanks to people like Bomme Raput, because if we don't have this kind of conversations, then we've got gaps in knowledge. So future generations will not understand why we have BELA. So this is a way of recording or archiving the culmination of our debates as a country. So for me, as a policy and governance specialist, I think these are some of the important epochs for our country to challenge one another in a very genuine and logical way. So this was a presentation that was made by the Ministry, by the Education in Parliament. I think it was in 2021, as part of making sure that we understand the kind of reforms that are needed. And the Deputy Minister alluded to this. And I think these are some of the very critical conversations because, and I will allude to that on my last slide, because the issue here is who wields the power within the education space. And we do not want to have arbitrary arrangements that will work sometimes and at times it will not work. So we want to put in institutional systems that will outlive all of us, that will last irrespective of who is the principal or irrespective of which school are we talking about. So that is what a policy or a governance structure needs to do. So this is what I thought would actually help us think even much more deeply about what is it that we're actually talking about. So I call this the theoretical lens for the BELA environment. So I chose this model. It's called an institutional theory, but it is applied within the education sector. So what we normally do is that when we have conversations, we need to understand what are we talking about, what frames the thinking around our conversation. Am I agreeing with BELA because I like the Deputy Minister? Am I disagreeing with BELA because I hate the minister? Or what is really the basis for the conversation? How can I view the BELA irrespective of my relationship with my minister or my government? And I think as South Africa, we need to come to those kind of conversations. So there are three important aspects that you will see here. The macro level that helps us to understand the overall societal patterns and behavior. So I've already spoken about the Constitution. I've already spoken about the ministry. But we also need to look into our socio-economic challenges. We also need to look into which child are we talking about? And in the context of South Africa, that is a very complex situation because it depends on who is your mother, where were you born, when were you born. And that, as one minister, it's going to be very difficult to try and have one instrument that will serve as a silver bullet for all those problems. And then the second layer that needs to be fed is the institution itself. So in this case, we are talking about the ministry. So what kind of skills do we want to see in the education ministries, the teachers, the managers, the administration? So these are the questions we need to be having. Who is there? Can we get profiles of people that are HODs for the past 10 years? We want to understand who are those people? What skills are they offering us as a society? Because you can't have public officials that we don't know about, that their CVs are not. If you open the website of the Department of Basic Education, what do you see? If they give us their financial reports, they are required to give us their financial reports annually. What do we see? We need to know what is the audit reports and reviews about education landscape in South Africa and the Department of Basic Education. So those are the organizational dynamics that will tell us if what we are doing is meaningful and practical, or it's going to be another turns and cycles. And of course, I think what we have seen so far is that we've seen, in fact, this is what we are doing. We are part of the actors now, trying to put pressure, trying to influence But our influences, as I have alluded in the beginning, is that it has to be informed. What influences, the kind of choices, our actions as interest groups, as universities, what is it that we are interested in? Will my input, my interest, make sure that that young person, that learner that we are talking about, gets into the entire education system and they come out as a better person, or they will come out as worse off? And this, for me, is what we need to be, again, scoping all our interest group and ask them this critical question. What is your interest in this? So if you are a SATU and you are fighting for teachers' rights, well and good, but are you saying that in fighting for the teachers' rights, this learner will come out a better person? And I think we don't always have this kind of honest conversations. Thank you. So again, in review of what the model that I just used now for the institutional theory, is that we speak about the cultural cognitive. So again, what we are going to bring into the schooling environment should now influence the learner, because we coming from the society, we coming from the environment, we are pushing that into the schooling. So what kind of a product are we going to have? And we're creating the norms. And now we're talking about regulation. So we're creating more rules, more laws, which is fine, because this is how we run institutions. We run institutions with policies, with rules, with laws, with principles, with processes. Otherwise, you will not run a successful institution if you don't have those systems and processes in place. And I think it is here, ladies and gentlemen, that the activities and resources would become very critical in ensuring stability and meaning to social life. In this case, we are referring to the education. Can we resource it in the best way that we are getting the outcomes that we are intended? It is in this case that we need to view institutions as transmitted by various types of carriers. For example, the symbolic systems, relational systems, routines. So these kind of people that we are churning out of the education systems, what do they become eventually? Do they stand tall as South Africans in global platforms and say, I'm a South African, I've gone through a South African education system, this is what it has made me, and then we've got many of those kind of people. So my last slide, Meraputi, is we're talking about this within a very specific, particular context and dynamic of the GNU. So I do have perspective. And one of the critical things that I don't have answers to is that we must remember that so far our public participation, so I spoke about the fact that we are a constitutional democracy and our constitution speaks about public participation, so it's entrenched. But what we have seen, and I'm yet to hear anyone who's going to tell me that there's any effective and better public participation model in South Africa better than the current SGB models. So in other words, if we are going to tamper with the SGB models, we need to remember what it is and how to make it better and not put it down. In local government, our ward participation system is completely dysfunctional, it's not working. But this is a very important matter. Maybe because we have a system that has professionalized education environment a little bit better, but so far the SGB is the most active, vibrant, and meaningful, in my view, in the entire context of constitutional democracy that involves parents, that involves stakeholders in a very meaningful way. But that does not mean that we should then give the powers to SGBs, because these are stakeholders, these are parents. So there has to be a system that maintains the professionalization, of the education sector itself. I have already spoken a lot about the role of trade unions and the interest groups. And then, of course, we have a very interesting dynamic that the minister is from a different political party with the deputy minister. And for me, this is quite important, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to mix it with my next point of the ideological fragmentation of the cabinet, as well as the statement of intent versus the constitutional provisions. Because what we have seen is that if you listen to many of these politicians, political leaders, they would talk about the statement of intent. And in my head, I'm thinking, can we talk about the Constitution first? Then we can talk about the statement of intent. Because if you are in government, you are not regulated by the statement of intent. The Constitution is very clear on what are the powers of the president, what are the powers of the, what is the role of the cabinet, and what ministers do and don't do, irrespective of the kind of the GNU arrangements that we have. So if we are going to make the education functional, fashionable, and progressive, we must ground it in our Constitution. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Professor Kidibone Paho. Can you give him a hand of applause again? What is our interest as actor? As actors, and he said that the theoretical lenses of the BELA environment, theoretical lenses for BELA environment, that is what he was saying, and that is why we chose the Unisa, because it's a terrain where ideas are contested. So that is why we are here. We are contesting in the very important of this BELA Act. And we are going to hear the interest of the unions. Ntate Masondo, e tla to re botsa gore le reng lona as unions in relation to this BELA Act. And then we've got also Satu is also here, but let's hear what NAPTOSA says. Thank you very much. Can you give him a hand of applause also?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I'm going to follow the trend and stand on the established protocol. Ndate you had the minister acknowledge me as the executive director of NAPTOSA. I wonder whether when I go back to work, I'll still have my job. Comrades and colleagues, I want to start by citing what Professor Maschaba said, about the value of family and the value of supporting one another. It resonates very well with me. I've adopted a motto which is part of our family values now. And it says, the beauty of life does not depend on how happy you are, but on how happy others can be because of you. TG, before I start with my presentation, there's an issue that worries me a lot. We seldom talk about child-headed households. These are a group of people who often fall between the cracks, and we never take care of them. These are children who have assumed adult responsibilities, and we seldom talk about them. These are children, when they need to have an identity document, they expect to be accompanied by an adult, and yet they have assumed adult responsibilities. These are children when they need social grants. They cannot be granted because they are not accompanied by any adult, yet these are children that have assumed adult responsibilities. These are children that fall through the cracks, and we need to sometimes take a step back and think about them. Sometimes they are abused by adults, and especially family members, because they depend on handouts, and sometimes adults within the family abuse these children in exchange of giving them some groceries and things like that. It hurts me so much. I picture my child going through that kind of a situation, and it really troubles me. I was requested to talk about the draft guidelines and give an opinion on what NAPTOSA thinks about that. The BELA Act is law. It's not something that we can debate as to whether we accept or we don't accept. It is law that we must implement. The draft guidelines are crucial for the correct interpretation and implementation of the BELA Act. It is important, Chairperson, that the wording that is open to various interpretation in the BELA Act is clarified in the guidelines to alleviate the possibilities of misinterpretation. The guidelines will remain effective until a policy on admission and national norms for public school capacity is determined. Lack of legal clarity in respect of certain provisions in the BELA Act may disrupt or undermine the carefully balanced set of powers and functions conferred by law on the national government, provincial governments, and public schools. It is important that such gaps are closed to avoid inconsistencies in the application of the Act. NAPTOSA agrees with the Minister of Basic Education that certain provisions of the BELA Act need to be supported by national policy, national norms and standards, and national regulations developed in line with the BELA Act. The guidelines apply to the DBE, the MEC responsible for education in each province, provincial education departments, public schools, represented through the SGBs, the staff of public schools, parents and learners, and are intended to provide guidance. The Ministry of Basic Education has taken the relevant parties to develop these guidelines, which will apply to various stakeholders, including the DBE, MECs, provinces, parents, and teachers. The implementation of Section 1 of the BELA Act. Definitions there require amendments and should be amended accordingly. It resonates well with us as a trade union. In terms of the implementation of Section 2, Chairperson, NAPTOSA supports the implementation of Section 2 of the BELA Act relating to compulsory school attendance in grade R, and also agree that any parent whose child must be enrolled in grade R at a school in terms of Section 2A of the BELA Act should not be prosecuted in terms of Section 2B of the Act if there are no grade R places available to that child at registered ECD centers, public and independent schools within 5 kilometers of their place of residence. Sometimes, because there's a penalty, a parent can be arrested for keeping the child at home. And we need to be realistic. In some areas, there are no ECD centers that are registered. You may find that a small child in grade R has to travel kilometers and kilometers to reach a school where grade R is accommodated. Another challenge that we are looking at is that we shouldn't be compelling schools to accommodate grade R classes if they don't have the capacity. You may have a grade R class with, we may end up with many children there, 50, 60 children. And what happens to the education? Is there quality education that can take place in such a situation? It is impossible. So instead of using teachers as crowd controllers, You know, when you have 60 children in a class or 70 children in the class, you're not teaching. You are just controlling the crowd. We cannot have something like that. So it is important that when we talk about, thank you very much. When we talk about these issues, we should be very practical and realistic. Grade R, we love that. But we need to ensure that we have the necessary resources as well. So we are pleading that in terms of the resources, government should play a major role in that. Dr. Matakanyane, let me tell you, when I was a school principal, I had a wonderful governing body that did not depend on government to provide even nutrition to the learners. We had a governing body that our children at Vezulazi Primary School in Braodcasting, where I was principal. The children had a meal that was provided by government, but before they go home, they had another full meal before they went home. And we had hired about 10 parents who were cooking for these children and dishing up for these children. These children had a meal. Where did we get the money from? From a governing body that believes in themselves. We got donations from Belgium, from Germany, from the Netherlands. And you see virtual meetings that are held now, you know. In 2007, our children were already communicating with children in the Netherlands. And this thing that we are talking about, virtual meetings, we came to know about it after COVID or during the time of COVID. Yet it was there many years ago. So the governing bodies should not only be looking at the buildings, the fund, the school fees and things like that. We've got to come up with innovations that will ensure that our schools become centers of learning and our schools become excellent centers of learning. We must provide safety and ensure that when our children go to school, they'll be able to come back and go home. In many instances, we hear of shootings in the schools, and we stand back and we are afraid. We become afraid just like our children. When your child is afraid and you as a parent is also afraid, what happens? You become dysfunctional. The children will not respect you as a father because you can't even protect them. So I'm going to cut on some of the things that have already been said by the speakers before me. The implementation of Section 3 of the BELA relating to the monitoring of learner attendance. Now, learner attendance, we sometimes talk about in loco parentis, you know, we talk about parenting these children as teachers as well as parents. We have that joint responsibility to ensure that our learners attend school. In the school where I was, there was no learner that would come late at school because the teachers knew that they had to be in the classroom before the learner, not the learner before the teacher. And we made sure that even the teachers that were at that school were dressing up like teachers, not like factotums. Sometimes you get to some schools, you can't even tell the difference between a teacher and a gardener. And that is something that we need to fight as unions. So it's a joint responsibility of the SGB and the school. I know in some schools, teachers would say, no, my job is to teach. But we are also parents to these children. The parents bring these children to us, and we take the responsibility of the parent when the children are at school. So we've got that kind of joint responsibility. But our parents, the parents must also play their role. They should not leave and dump these children to the teachers. Because sometimes you end up as a nurse, as a teacher, you end up as a policeman, and you are unable to do what you are supposed to do, to teach, because of that. I'll go to the implementation of Section 4 relating to admission of learners to public school. Mera butiwa erata 4 and 5. admission and language. I was angry with my president, Cyril Ramaphosa, when he gave 3 months. Or no, are postponing for 3 months. Because we wanted as NAPTOSA that it be implemented, the BELA Act to be implemented immediately. We wasted 3 months. We could be very far now. We have trained everybody, and everybody is aware of what is happening. But he's a gentleman. Our president is a gentleman, and he gave, space for other people to vent out. It's okay. He's a very democratic person, and I decided, no, I'm no longer angry with him. Okay. Section 4D of the BELA Act requires SGBs of public schools to review their admission policies, and when they no longer meet the requirements set out in the section, they need to amend them, align them with what the BELA Act provides. You know, some schools, they had an admission policy in 1990. You look at it, it is gathering dust. They are still using that admission policy that they used in 1990. And you tend to wonder as to whether this school is functional or not. There's been so many changes. And by the way, I'm also chairperson of the governing body of Arcadia Primary here. And I'm ensuring that an African language is going to be introduced. The majority of children there are black, and the teachers, majority are white. We are changing that. And we are now appointing even black teachers in that school. That's the work of the governing body. That's the work of the governing body. Ensure that transformation happens. Don't just read information and do nothing about it. Get this information, apply it. Thank you very much. I'll summarize. I wish we had the whole day. Section 5 of the BELA Act relating to the language. What are we saying about admission and what we're saying about the language? The youth has said it all, and I agree entirely with you. We cannot, 30 years after our democracy, we're still talking about schools that cannot accommodate children. If you have children in a school, you have 30 children at least in a school that and they want to do Setswana, why prevent them from doing Setswana? Because the children are there, the number is there, but you are depriving these children. And our parents, sometimes I blame them, parents. I blame them because they think if you can speak English and then even your intonation and your accent changes, that you have arrived. They think you have arrived. You have not arrived if you can't speak good English. And we tend to even frustrate our grannies when the children visit the granny. They can't even speak Setswana or Sizulu. They want to speak English with the granny. The granny does not know English. We frustrate our children. All right. Let me leave others and let me talk about the code of conduct. The code of conduct in a school, any policy in the school is supposed to be developed by the governing body. And there are so many challenges that you have seen. Your child comes with dreadlocks and the school chases your child away. And this impacts on a number of things: your cultural beliefs, your religion, your health, and stuff like that. Some schools don't even consider that. They just want to throw you away. And I don't know who says when you have an afro or you have big hair that you can't take care of that. Your hair is neat and you are presentable. It's just that you like your own style. Instead of looking at serious issues of providing quality education in the school, we want to look at how this child's hair is like and this one is like and so on. Those are the challenges that we need to grapple with and we need to challenge very seriously. our constitution protects our rights as far as our cultural beliefs are concerned, and that must also happen in our schools. Colleagues, I'm going to leave our presentation with the program director here, but there are a lot of things that we still feel we need to tackle as unions, as governing bodies, as parents, as civic associations, and so on. We are pro the BELA. We are embracing it, and as NAPTOSA, we have actually started running courses and workshops with the members. For example, on the 11th, we already had a webinar which was attended by over 200 people about the BELA Act. And it is a joint responsibility. We are not closing doors to anyone. If there are teachers around here who would like to have that kind of a workshop, technology is very helpful. You can have 1,000 people attending a webinar. So let's help one another. The Department of Education, let's join hands. Unions, we are working very well with SATU. People in the past thought the trade unions are fighting against each other. We are one, and nobody's going to divide us. As much as we have different ideologies, but as far as the education of the South African child, we are one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ntate Masondo. He said that they wanted to implement the BELA Act when it was passed, and he could not understand why the president have to prolong it. But he also said that he is a gentleman. The president is a gentleman, and I think probably that kind of a message will go to him, that what you said, my brother, that the president of South Africa, he's a gentleman. He allowed the process of democracy to unfold. But you never said every women are ladies, ladies that are here. Please, okay, I'm jealous. However, thank you very much, NAPTOSA, for embracing the BELA Act, as even our professor said that what is our interest as actors? We are here as actors, and then our interest is to ensure that the interpretation, the implementation, and the understanding and is understood by all, especially the principals. He even cited even the SGPs. We really want to say thank you. Can you give him a hand of applause? And in our midst, Prof, she was having some engagement. The one who is hosting us, Prof Emakwe, she is with us. Prof from the School of the College of Education, she's here. She really wants to, utile kanama. Yeah, she's here, and thank you that you gave us the chance that you must come and engage and contest all what is here, and then we come with amicable solution in this BELA Act. Thank you, Prof. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Medebi. Kitloli dumedisa, because we are also talking about languages. Our understanding is that Takele Musoto, Kitloli dumedisa kaofela. And thank you, Galileboha, for making the time for little more about this bill. I'm standing on the protocol, all the people who have passed this podium today. And I have to apologize first by saying that I was unable to make it. Something just cropped up in our spaces. We always have something cropping up, and I had to address that first. But thank you so much for the kind invitation, And this is really at the center of what education is all about. We at the College of Education here at Unisa, it's one of the largest colleges in the country, not only in the country, in the continent. And I may add in the world, because this university is the oldest and the largest university in the world. So we produce a majority of teachers. I think all people who have been teachers, some of them have gone through our doors. If not, whoever taught you has been a student from here. Whoever taught you. If you haven't gone through this, someone has actually impacted your life. That's why today you are looking at this as something that is very, very critical. A lot of speakers have spoken, but I was always surprised why the issue of the BELA Act is about 2 clauses out of 56. There are 56 clauses in the BELA Act. And can we maybe start talking about the other 56, because they are also equally as important as these 2. Because what we tend to do is that we get the wind of what everybody else is saying, and then we forget what this is all about. So can we go back to the basics? Look at this particular act as an act that is dealing with addressing inequalities in the schooling system. We may ask ourselves why 30 years later we are talking about inequalities. There's been a lot of things. Colleagues, I have to tell you that the education system, it's not only about South Africa, by the way. I work in the continent as well in other projects. It's the way it was presented, the way it was introduced in the continent. It was introduced by people who really wanted to make sure that there is inequality. It has never been an equal setting right at the beginning. When missionaries came, I'll just do I really like to do this because it helps me to sort of understand, and one of the areas that I work on is the futures of education. So the first missionaries, and when you look at the futures, you have to start at the back, because it's important for us to interrogate the past, find out what worked for them, and why did that vision become such a strong vision that survived over centuries. Now, the introduction of formal schooling in Africa was done through the missionaries. It was a missionary education. And they had the clear purpose. Their vision was very clear. Their vision was to ensure that people are converted into Christianity, indigenous people. That was their mission. And how do you do that? Religion, we know, all of us, is about spirituality, and spirituality is about values. As human beings, as beings, we have 3 parts that separates us from other animals, animals and flowers and whatever. Those parts, one is the physical part, the physical being. The second one is the mental being. And the third one is the spiritual being. And now the physical, it's kelekopokop. Then the mental is the one that assists us to do what we can do. But the spiritual one is what grounds our values. Now, when you get people whose purpose is to convert you, where do they go to? They deal with your values. They deal with your spirituality. They remove all that is grounding you as a human being. And the missionaries were very successful in that. They replaced the local cultures with the Western cultures by placing, listen to this, emphasis on the values, standards, and acceptable behaviors that is central to the morality. We talk about moral degeneration in South Africa, and I don't understand why are we not taking that subject very seriously. Because you cannot talk about moral degeneration without dealing with where this moral degeneration is coming from. Then they came along with us, and then somewhere we had apartheid education in the 50s. And one of the things I think also of converting people is also undermining their languages. It's beginning to undermine the languages of those people. That's one thing of doing that. And it's a very powerful tool of change. Then the second one, then we get to apartheid. Apartheid was a legislative tool from which institutional racism was created. Institutionalized, creating discrepancy in terms of access to quality education amongst black people, but their vision was very clear. Separate development. You do you, I do me. And we got into that. Funding allocation was unequal. All the things, regulated admission, whites were going to white schools, blacks were going to black schools, coloreds were going to colored schools, Indians were going to Indian school. And the other issue is that when they got into power, the first thing that they did was to develop their language. Whether we like it or not, they started from scratch. There was no Afrikaner in the world. They developed their language. They started from scratch. Not only that, they called themselves Afrikaner, grounding themselves in the African context. So, colleagues, I'm raising this as we are talking about this BELA Act and asking ourselves, what is it that we want? Kiboni, in the program, Dr. Ramaphosa is going to talk about what the future holds. It's important for us to talk about what the future. We know what had happened. We know what brought us here. We need to start looking at how best can we ensure that this thing happens. There are other clauses that I just want to bring to your attention, and then I'm closing. Making grade R compulsory. Colleagues, I can't tell you how important that is, because children has to learn how to read in their own mother tongue and how to write in their own mother tongue. Without giving off my age, when I was growing up, in primary school, we had lower primary back then. In lower primary, you were asked to go and listen to your grandmother. They all knew that we were living with our grandmothers during that time because it was apartheid era. Our grandmothers were the ones who were looking after children that time. There was no crèche. Then you have to go listen to grandmother's stories, and you come back and you recite them in front of the classroom. So you had to come with the best, scariest story all the time. And grandmothers couldn't keep up, and sometimes they'll be like, oh no, oh no. And then you started being creative. And those classes were all of you were going to do that, to do that. What it was saying, it was talking about the values, it was talking about morality, it was also talking about those ditsomo ka Sesotho. Ditsomo are grounded on moralities, they are grounded on values, are grounded on all these things that are very indigenous in our system. And children need that because they allow your mind to go wild. We have killed creativity in schools by packing up the curriculum with things that we think people need to know. And then they go into the work environment, they grow up sometime, and we expect them to be creative. We inherit them in higher education, and we don't understand when they keep on saying, but what do you want me to do? And I'm just write, just be creative. But we have killed that creativity in the schooling system. That's the first thing that we did. We destroyed our young people from that age. And hence it's important that we need to bring grade R so that, and languages, our local languages, so that our children start talking about that. And making it compulsory is what is important. We have a diploma in this college, a diploma in grade R. that looks after that. And I think one of the mistakes that we did was to take that part of education into social development ministries, because it's an education space. And we need to get those gogos back into those schools. We shouldn't sit here and say we don't have capacity. We need to bring them back into those schools and let them teach the way they have been taught, let alone teach in the way that we want them to be taught. My problem now is that I can't get teachers or lecturers who have who knows languages, our own local languages. They're dead. How do I get lecturers who are going to teach my teachers to be able to teach in classrooms? They're not. All of them have done language, maybe one subject. Others, the last time they did language was in high school. But at the university level, we are struggling. We really, really are struggling to get just language lecturers. So, and also, because language has been downplayed for such a long time, for the last 30 years, language, our indigenous languages have been downplayed. People were not taking them up in universities. And those departments, I saw those departments closing down. From being the cream to the departments that are closing down. I've seen them in this university. We closed the departments that were supposed to build us up. There are other clauses, colleagues, that really we need to pay attention to. Criminalizing parental negligence. I went to schools to check on my students. In one class, there would be 40 or more students, and these were grade 2 students. And when I was in that classroom with grade 2 students, the teacher, who was our student, was saying, and I said, oh, this is a big number. And she said to me, no, it's not, because 14 of them are not here. Oh, 14. And she says, yeah, this is how it works. Parents are negligent, they drink, they are on drugs, they don't, and these are grade 2, they need to be washed before they come to school, they need to be woken up, but parents are not doing that anymore. Then she says, you know, the worst part is that this group that is coming in today, tomorrow there'll be another group that is different from this group. So how do you move forward with a class like that? And until parents are held accountable, and then we will continue to have this problem. Because what happens is that they move within the system as they are, raw as they are. And they get stuck when they go to grade 4, they get stuck at grade 7, and then we celebrate matric of half of the students who started in the beginning. When they get into grade 1, we have about 1.2 million. By the time they get to matric, they are 60%, they are 40% less by the time they get to matric. Those who even write matric are even less. So I always say, can we look at the cohort, please? Let's not look at who is graduating now. And look at those places, those areas where we lose students. We lose students in grade 4 because of the jump of language, again, language issues. From grade 3 to grade 4, we lose them because of that big jump. And then we lose them again in grade 7, when they jump into grade 8. Because again, we switch things so quickly all the time. So I think our education needs some work. Home education regulation, very important. We need to talk about that. We need just to talk about things that are critical. Accommodating religion in school codes of conduct and ban on corporal punishment. That we have worked to some extent. But now children are turning against teachers. They are doing it to teachers. Because no one is holding them accountable. When the teacher is doing it to them, they record it. But when they are doing it to teachers, they don't record it. We cannot have a country that doesn't respect the elderly. Thank you.
Thank you, our host. she's actually defending. She's a defender. Defending you as teachers, as principals, and thank you very much. And even actually saying that, come back and learn more, because she said that there are more classes that we have to put more eyes in them. And thank you very much, Prof. And I can also try to, recruit. I think this is a time that you should be able to further your education. And here she is here. Please, principals, teachers, this is the time that you should actually broaden your understanding about education. And she emphasized the importance of grade R. And even Ntate Masondo said that, access to grade R, it is a challenge. And I know that Dr. Gwen Ramaphosa, as a medical doctor, she will tell you when does the developmental stage of the brain of a child, how important that you should be able to develop a child and make that child to understand at what age. And Prof. Dr. Gwen Ramaphosa, the theorist here, we are, and the Mayanga and the policymakers, let's come together, and really we want actually more educated people who can be able to interpret, dissect, and bring, this education to the fore, as in order that we can be able to understand it. As Prof have said, you can see that she is defending. She was defending this education. Thank you so much, Prof. Now, re tlo kopa Ntate Ndlebe. Re tlogele go bua English, e tlile ka sekepe. O re boleletse Prof gore hey, development, the issue of language is very important, the language issue. And Eric ka Sesotho ka Setswana, and I think even the dress code, and that then Masondo. Na I'm an African. Ake mo Venda. Ake mo Sotho. Ake mo Pedi. Ake ing. I'm an African. You can see even how I dress. I'm an African. I thank you. And that for questions, we'll ask even Ntate from SATU just to come and get some questions from the floor, so that after that, Mayor Gwen Ramaphosa can be able to talk about the future of this BELA Act, the future of of education. Ntate Ndlebe, we are going to take some questions from the floor. And because SATU iteng, if the teacher di tlogela the classroom, but when the BELA Act is there. And the SGP, or the other SGPs are here. And even on the moral issues, the South African Council of Churches, or from the faith-based Khurbaring. And I was speaking to one of the teacher, she's a retired. I said, retirement is only when you are 6 feet. It's when you are cremated. Now, I'm not retired. I'm still on my feet. I'm still having my own brains. So great area short. So rakopa. Oh, okay. Okay. The younger says that let's hear first what does the chairperson of the Progressive Citizen, Dr. Gwen Ramaphosa today, she's a progressive citizen. And she says that, can we allow, let's hear this progressive citizen, the chairperson, who actually said that let's interrogate this BELA Act. What is she going to say? And you know Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa, I call her the first woman, the woman of first, the first mayor, the first treasurer general, the first. So let's hear. The one who actually made the people to come here, the teachers to come and talk about the BELA Act, the first progressive citizen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mme Debbie Raputi. She's a professional nurse by training and also a retired member of parliament, in addition to being a princess in one of our royalties in Northwest. Thank you for this opportunity as the CEO of the Progressive Citizens Forum. I must say that this is really a wonderful opportunity for me to come and share with you some ideas on what we think about the discourse that is taking place on the BELA bill. I want to acknowledge our Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister Dr. Jaina Maule, and also acknowledge our hosts, the Executive Dean of the College of Education, Professor Mpine Makwe, the Executive Dean of the College of Economics and Management Sciences, Professor Masichaba. I was saying to Professor Masichaba that my sister has just retired, the eldest at home, as the head of the English department in Unisa. And she tells me that her name is still there. So I will tell her that you still miss her fondly. Thank you. A ke tsebe hore motokwa o tsere kae courage ya hore na a be professor ya sekgowa. I guess it's also to help reverse, but I think the stories she told me, including making sure that all other professions that are trained from here understand the root causes of the language that they are going to use in the workplace, lawyers and everybody else, was important to close the gap. So I've been intimately involved with Unisa for quite a while, from different perspectives, including also through the various platforms we've shared and continues to share with the leadership of this university. Not only the current Vice Chancellor, Prof. Lenkabula, but also particularly Professor Bijana, when I was the Executive Mayor of Tshwane. The Unisa was one of the pillars of knowledge, because you needed to have evidence-based policies to really turn around societal challenges, and also to better position our country through our municipalities, amongst others. I want to acknowledge also the director of the Institute of Governance in Northwest, Prof. Kidiboni Pakho, Mr. Masondo of NAPTOSA. Thank you very much also for sharing your ideas. I also acknowledge someone I from time to time share platforms with, Ndate Makatanyane. I think he's out now. Some few weeks ago, or maybe months ago, we had a forum that was looking at health in schools, amongst others. And I want to also acknowledge all the participants in this colloquium, including also members of the various sectors, student, youth, the academia, the women's movements, professional bodies, and members of the media. I was asked to speak about something very interesting, which is the future of education in South Africa, envisioning the long-term effects of the BELA Act on the national education framework. Wow. I really felt that I must start by saying I'm a health professional, so that Professor Magwe must not critique too much the theory, the philosophy of the educational thoughts that I will present today. And I believe that health is a profession amongst all professions, whether it's the therapist from physio and everywhere else until medical and specialists. It's dealing with life and death and quality of life. But I always say that education is the mother of them all. So if you are in education, there is no other that is more important. So today we're dealing with a subject matter that is critical to our livelihood, a subject matter that is critical to this nation that we all would like to see thriving. I'm told that last year, 2024, was a year of focus on education in Africa. And I was feeling a bit, you didn't miss it, no? You knew about that. And I said I missed it. Perhaps it was because of elections. We had very robust and to some of us bruising elections in 2024. But I think we have also emerged out of last year, 2024, with a better understanding of our society than we had. Our society, especially many of the citizens, feel that policies and politics are getting too distant from them. Many families, many young people, many women, many young men, many men, and many sectors of society feel that the government is like, receding away from them, does not understand them, doesn't understand the aspirations that made them queue into the nights every election after every election since 1994. It is the first time historical that in our democracy, almost 60% of those eligible did not go out and vote. South Africans are becoming disinterested. They say loud and clear, you as politicians are playing politics to yourselves, within your own organizations, amongst yourselves. You have forgotten what 1994 was all about. And this is the reason why some of us become interested in the discourse in society. Would recall that just prior to the 2024 elections, society was polarized. It was like we were pre-1990. Others were pulling that way, others that way. And even our democracy of 30 years, we could not and did not celebrate adequately because we were highly polarized and we discouraged at a political level and we discouraged the society. So when the post-election, we had to sit down and reflect what do we do. I know it's very difficult. You don't know how to address me, whether TG of the ANC, whether Dr. Ramaphosa is a health professional, or whether a chairperson of PCF and PBF, whether whatever. No, it does not matter. What matters is that many, if not all of us that are here, are leaders in this society. there are those, regardless of our affiliation, there are those that are looking unto us to give hope, to give clarity, and they expect that from time to time we must sit down and engage. We must sit down and try and pull the nation together than pull the nation apart. And it is for that reason that I requested the Progressive Citizens Forum, whose mandate, amongst others, is to create these platforms, colloquia, dialogues, to look at two pieces of legislation which we believe are transformatory, which we were part and parcel of motivating for, and which we participated in Parliament in terms of submissions around. That we look at these two in particular, the NHI as well as education, and have dialogues to understand why are we apart, and what can we as leaders do to bring ourselves together to focus on the bigger picture, perhaps the 56, and be able to navigate the other two or so clauses, but not lose the bigger picture of what exactly we are doing in leading this society from different sectors. But subsequently, since I asked her, there's another one that has come up, which is the Expropriation Act, which we must also dialogue around it. What is it? What does it say? Others are saying it says nothing. This is just a gimmick by, well, the ANC must always take the flag, eh? It's not the GNU. But anyway, it's just a gimmick to say we are making progress, but substantively. And this is also by one of the renowned SCs, senior counsels, Dobi. He says, what? There's really nothing in here. And so says the EFF as well, that it's just a gimmick. You haven't changed anything. State anyway had this authority to expropriate for public interest. The Gautrain land where the Gautrain has gone has been expropriated. Me, myself, when I was the executive mayor of Tshwane, there was expropriation of the land that belonged to Dr. Mutswenyane in Winterveld to allow the building of houses, and so forth and so forth. When you put pipes and pylons, you expropriate and all that. So there is that extreme that says there's really no progress made. You've just, shuffled forward. And there is another extreme that is calling for South Africa to be punished, economically and otherwise, including withholding of life-saving aid for persons with HIV and AIDS. So why are we South Africans so polarized? Where do we leave the people that look unto us as leaders? I did ask Medebi, I told you she's a very powerful person. I actually instructed her to invite Solidarity and AfriForum. That we must sit here with Caligril and others, so that we hear them at close range. Exactly what are they saying? And we explain ourselves to them, so that after that, if they still interpret us differently, the rest of society differently, then we will know that there are other agendas that they are pushing. They don't have the interest of South Africa. But we must exhaust all possible platforms for discussions, for engagements. I'll give you an example. the NHI, there is great, great concern that the medical aids are going to go away. I can assure you that if I collapse here, please take me to the nearest public hospital. There's a colleague of ours. There are no doctors all the time in private hospitals. The system does not work for South Africans, especially when you are sick. You are expected to check how deep your pocket is when you are gasping, even if it is against the Constitution. You first have to be cleared. We have intervened and intervened. A colleague of ours, Methandin Dlovu, a leader of society who also fought for this country as MK, the real one, you know. She got involved in a car accident going to Northwest, a very bad car accident. She survived at the scene, was taken to the nearest private hospital. There was also a nearest public hospital. I don't blame the doctor who delayed, but by the time the anesthetist arrived, it was too late. Because they don't stay, they are not there all the time. Even at this moment, I have a family member who is in hospital, who was critical. We had to phone the doctors and all that. Some of us are privileged because even if you don't know these doctors, because now there are many, unlike during our times, you know someone who may know the doctor, even in private hospital. So I think let's agree that neither the public hospital is ideal for South Africans, nor the private medical aid-backed system are ideal for all of us. So it is not that government wants to grab, government wants to take away the resources, government wants to do X, Y, and Z. Government is just a referee. Let us come together as leaders of society in different fields. The capacity we have in medical administration, the NHI will need it. That capacity should not go. The NHI will need it. The capacity we have in professionals that are there, the NHI will need it even more. So I really hope the second, there will also be the second phase. We did have a similar dialogue on NHI, and we will also continue to dialogue because now we're dealing with the how to take it forward. So I was just explaining that we are here because there is certainly a need to dialogue. Many of us have been in dialogues, very tough ones, even during the anti-apartheid struggle, and what is not in many of the histories or written in the history books, professors, is the role is around the role of women in ensuring that our dialogues break the back of apartheid. We spoke across racial lines, led by, amongst others, Masisulu. We went to the Afrikaner and the English women and said, really? Do we give birth to our children to go and slaughter one another in the townships and at the borders and in the frontline state? Really? You think there's nothing we can do? We must leave these men with high levels of hormones going up and down, and we just sit back and watch our children slaughtering themselves? And it is those discussions that also contributed to an increase in conscientious objection for young people for conscription. So the dialogue for us has always worked. And we believe that we can also have peace in the world and justice and a shared prosperity through dialogue and engagement. And that is the background of this session and many other sessions that we'll have. To prepare South Africa for the 21st century, the future education system should prioritize inclusive access to technology, personalized learning, development of critical thinking, and problem-solving skills, continuous training of teachers, and a curriculum focused on the 21st century skills like digital literacy, entrepreneurship, adaptability while addressing existing inequalities and ensuring all students have equitable access to quality education regardless of their background. This can, will, and must require significant investments in digital infrastructure, teacher training, and curriculum reform to equip students for the evolving job market and economic needs of our country and also of this continent. This continent is, the professor, head of the College of Economics, I have a null hypothesis that Africa is the richest continent in the world. Please have some of your students prove that null hypothesis wrong. And that is why the Europeans said they couldn't believe it, that they really struck it. They sat and divided this continent among themselves. They plundered it for years, but the wealth still remains. Others came here and took the finest, the most strongest, to go and even build their country across the seas. They forget that even America was built on the backs of African children. And it is Africa. And even the demographic dividend that is before us to be tapped, it is for us to apply our minds, especially as leaders from different sectors, and say, how best can we prepare our young for this shared prosperity? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Indigenous knowledge systems, young men and young women were prepared for the livelihood of their communities. Others would go look after cattle because that was the wealth. Others would go to the fields. That was the sustenance, food security, and so forth and so forth. And if we think of education systems, the schooling and even higher education systems, the skills development programs, as a preparatory school or preparatory platforms to unlock that economic wealth, economic endowments that this country has, this country and this continent can stand shoulder to shoulder with any other. Its children will be ready. It cannot only be Europeans. They went through a European Renaissance post-World War. They had, if you read about the Pied Piper and the rats, they had rat-infested towns post-World War. They had cholera post-World War. But they focus on the economic turnaround, and they made it. They became confident, and they made it. So our education system, look at the Chinese. In the past 40 years, they eradicated poverty because they focused on training themselves and their children, to leverage what they have as a nation, so that they can be on par with all other nations. I don't know what percentage of American debt is from China. And that's why they can stand confidently and say, we're not afraid of your sanctions. You sanction us, we sanction you. Norway, same thing. You sanction us, we sanction you. So it is part and parcel of building a more humane society, where there's mutual respect and where there's also peaceful coexistence, respecting the sovereignties of each country. But it is through how we prepare the young people. I will not go into this subject matter, But if the BELA bill is to assist us, or the implementation of the BELA Act, Professor Makwe, it is now an act. If it has to assist us, let us look at it from a futuristic point of view. What is it? How can it help us? How can we help these young people to mitigate high pregnancy levels, to mitigate drugs in schools, to mitigate violence, to mitigate the household orphans, child-headed households, which are also one of a generational consequence of the pandemics that we've had. After HIV, that was a huge problem that we needed to solve societally. And South Africans didn't deal with it in an organized manner, as, for instance, Rwanda did with after that genocide. I know because Tshwane had a sister city agreement with Kigali. And my counterpart mayor, who was a veterinary doctor, had about 5 families that they had to adopt. Everyone adopted a family, a child, an orphan. There was no child who was an orphan. The adage that says it takes a village to raise a child was implemented systematically in an organized manner. So if BELA bill will also make sure that those children are not left behind, the way we implement it, the regulations that are following, the way we work together to lead so that it helps us to have an education systems that prepares us for the future, I think then we are on the right track. But if the BELA bill will make us remain where we are and not leapfrog us, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and say, South Africans, your livelihood, a shared prosperity that is called by the Freedom Charter, will be in the distant forever. The unemployed youth, we call them NEETs, not in employment, education, or training facilities. The unemployed youth, it will just grow bigger and bigger. So it is time to ensure that we use the advantages of technology to bridge the digital divide through education. And if we can enable BELA bill in its objective of improving access and to ensure progressive realization of the constitutional rights of all our children, then we would have had positive discussions. I'm trying to let us go beyond just 2 or 3 glosses. But to say, how do we take it to the next level? I will appreciate the contributions that were made by not repeating them. But I would also agree with Professor Makwe that we must have a futuristic outlook of the bill itself. We must, yes, if we are to introduce as a language of training, Sepedi, my language, we must then start with books being written. Medicine in Sepedi, mathematics in Sepedi dipalo, and all that, and say, we're giving ourselves as academics the next 10 years to write books in Zulu, in Xhosa, textbooks. For that matter, it's easy now, you can do it online. And say over this time, but for now, perhaps we can say Why don't we all make the working languages, empower our children to deal with it without undermining what UNESCO advises us on the importance of mother tongue, especially in early childhood development. That's where confidence, critical thinking is developed and consolidated. I would also agree with the Dean of Economics, College of Economics and Management Sciences, Professor Maschava, that families must play a central role. About 15 months ago, I went to my primary school in Atteridgeville, and I just felt it is exactly how it was when I was studying. It is one of those that were Akshem left behind. And I didn't know whether I should feel anger or I should feel what. But we engaged with the teachers, and it's also about leadership. I think Ndate Masondo did say it. It's about leadership. The school was dysfunctional. That's why it was missed. There were acting principals. And, I won't say what this principal told me because you can work it out who it was, some of you. But I was like petrified. And we worked hard to get a principal appointed. And now we've got a dynamic woman there who is self-driven, was studying also digital education by herself, even before she was invited by the Department of Education. And we held, I'll just tell you two occasions. We held a Mother's Day, and the parents are all little. They're all small, and they are away from the Rakadis and the Gogos. They don't have that support network and system. And, Father's Day also came, a similar situation. But I'm glad the fathers also came. So we have agreed in principle that working with the SGB, we should introduce parenting lessons or skills, rather, after hours or on Saturdays and Sundays, to ensure that this collaborative parenting can happen effectively. Otherwise, all the burden is on teachers with all these challenges. And we need to have the SGBs also going back to understand the backgrounds of the children, finding out whether the ward committees, Prof. The ward committees are a backbone of participatory democracy of our country. And many of them are dysfunctional because they are now about tenders. If tenders don't come, they become disinterested. But it's about creating a village so that our children are not prey for organized criminals, gangsters, and drug peddlers, either at school or at home. So we need to organize ourselves differently. And, I hope we are able to use the BELA Act now to really support children comprehensively, as well as their parents. I would also agree that we need to have efficient and effective implementation. And I was glad that the Deputy Minister herself said they are led by the Minister. I think the ANC must realize that it didn't get 50%. We got 40%. And that's why we invited all other parties, without exception, that let's all now humble ourselves. There's none of us who got 50%. Let's put the interest of South Africa first. And I'm glad because I was with a minister, our Minister of Basic Education in South Africa, Minister Khwagube, in the negotiations. And we asked one another tough questions. one of the questions we asked was, do you really believe in the clause of redress, which is in the Constitution, to her party? And she was there. And she was amongst those, not the only one, that had to respond to that. So I would really, really plead for South Africans to say, let's support the president of the country constitutionally. The statement of intent, Prof, affirms that we will work within the Constitution and the laws of the country. Everything else is secondary. And I hope you'll be addressed. So, yes, everybody, recently, somebody actually said, I won't mention who, this party says, can you present their inputs? And we said, no, everybody must present their inputs. So we are having dialogues amongst ourselves. And we are all working hard to put South Africans, and in case of the BELA Act, our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren's future first. And that's what this act should help us to do. So I'm glad that the minister says they are moving with speed, led by the deputy minister, led by the minister, to implement the act. And the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Let's test it. Let's put it to the litmus test and see if there's anyone who would be left behind. Because it's our commitment that no one child, regardless of background, cultural, racial, gender, orientation, should be left behind. That is what we understand as the objective of the BELA Bill, or BELA Act now. I apologize again. Just to work towards a conclusion, as I indicated, many of the issues that I was going to share with you have been aptly presented. Section 29 of the Constitution contains the right to a basic education, including adult basic education, and the right to further education. And it states also that the government, the state, should take reasonable measures to make the progressive realization of these rights and ensure that they are available and accessible. We have made great progress in our democracy since 1994. Secondary education, which is also under discussion today, tripled. The children who have completed secondary education tripled from the 9.4% in 1996. We don't have figures to prior because statistics was unscientific before then. So 9.4% in 1996 to 34% in 2022. We tripled those in our society who have secondary education. And we've also achieved gender parity from 6.7% in 96 to 13.1% of those who had secondary education in the population for females, and from 8.6% to 12.3% males. So there's parity now. So we have made significant progress. This is what you also call demographic changes. It's huge changes in society. President Cyril Ramaphosa, the gentleman. I call him statesman, a diplomat par excellence. When introducing the act in December 2024, he said this act is vital to the transformation of education system in our country. The act is an important part of ongoing efforts to build an education system that is more effective and more equitable in line with the precepts of the Constitution, I close quote. So let's build on this progress that we have made, and let's also build consensus as we implement, let's participate in the regulations that the ministry is putting through, and let us live towards a shared prosperity that we all would want to achieve in our lifetime for our children and generations to come, and indeed live the dream of President Nelson Mandela when he said, "I've cherished the ideal of a democratic, free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities," close quote. So I want to leave you with those words, because we also would like to hear from you who are participants in this meeting in terms of how you see the future, and to what extent can we work together, collaborate together around the BELA Act. Those who want to challenge it in the Constitution, Constitutional Court, I think they're free to do so. It's a democratic right. What we understand the delays with the presidency is that before he signs, because these laws go through rigorous processes in Parliament, Parliament also signs the constitutionality and then hands over to the president, who is the only executive that can enact these laws once they come from Parliament. And he has a legal team and a legal obligation and a constitutional obligation to test these laws against the Constitution, the supreme land of our country. So if the NHI Act has gone through that, I have no doubt that the BELA Act also has gone through that rigorous process. So let us not delay the future of our children. Let us unlock this demographic dividend and prepare our children to unlock the wealth that we have in our country for a shared prosperity. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I call her Professor because I think you have learned a lot here. So thank you so much, Professor Dr. Ramaphosa. And I think, Professor, you must do your work. Then she must be really be honored to be a professor. Can you give me a hand of applause, please? This is continuous professional development, isn't it? We are here, we are having professors, we've got educators, we've got a lot. And most importantly, Professor Mpine. Professor Mpine, I think all these delegates who are here that attended, they must get certificate. I'm going to sit you here, here on the neck. And then we want to, when we go to the offices, it's been signed by how many? 4 professors. That is yourself, that is Professor Kidiboni, Professor Masichaba, Professor Ramaphosa, all of them. Is it not correct? You were actually recommended by Professor Mary Metcalfe. And questions that are going to be posed here, you are going to answer them because she said she was the former MEC of education here in Gauteng. And I heard a professor saying that we must make education fashionable. No, it's a culture. Education must be a culture. And as I have already posed the question that, guys, can you go to that professor, and be students? I'm one of the students of Unisa. I'll be one of the students here. Please research. About how many clauses that you said that needs to be interrogated? 56. And I'm sitting on the section, only in those sections, but can you please say that, Prof? I've got already have a questions, you know, theoretically, what does it mean? What, you know, on all these clauses? A student of Unisa, in one of those clauses, start having some questions in those clauses. Ntate come when people ask questions, you are going to answer, and Satu, and Ntate Cyril. Please, any questions? Come and stand here. You're looking so professional. And come and really answer the questions. Any questions that you want to pose from the, all these professors that are sitting here? Even when Ntate Masondo, even if you are not a professor, but you are a professor of in your own right, and even the younger. So questions, pose them, and then Ntate Ndlebe, thank you very much for coming. Okay, all right. Okay, questions? Imantate, what are the questions? Any questions from the floor?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I prefer taking all questions instead of having stage by stage. So if you come up with 100 questions, so be it. Can I recognize you as one? You're not, okay. You press, they want a crash course on how to. Okay. Okay, I'm starting with a cue. Those hands again. So you'll be the first one. Please keep to the numbers. You'll be the second one. It doesn't discriminate. And now you're confusing me. Okay, let's start with the first one. You'll be second, row by row. You'll be number 3. Can we go up? So it's 3 questions here. Can we come to this side? Any question here? We're going up. You'll be the next one. Can we move this side? Any questions from the other side? It looks like we've got just a few. Let's start with the first question.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I maybe have this another view? Even the suggestions are allowed. Okay, thanks. Good afternoon once more, all protocol observed. My name is Mos Wasukwadi from National Association of School Governing Body. I'm a regional organizer in Greater Joburg. Okay, the first maybe suggestion. I've heard that a deputy minister speaks about working hand in hand between the education department and the associations. But he said a parent who seeks for a child space, he mustn't go to the association, but he can go into the department. But the association must assist as we work hand in hand. Sometimes we have challenges, especially with district officials. Sometimes they don't want to come into the board, but not all of them. So can you please strengthen that gap so that the education of the child be successful? Second, I've heard one of the professor, he said the SGP Association is a public figure in the society. because of, yes, most of the time, there is this statement that says the principal, it becomes in charge or take responsibility when the child is get harmed inside the school. But when it's outside, the law of the country must be in charge. But the association, as a member of the association, whether the child is inside or outside the school, we are always there as a public figure. And then the third one, bullying and drug abuse are the greatest enemies in our schools. When we observe as an association, inspection, the inspectors are no longer there like before. Can you please bring that back? Because of, if the inspection is not there, I'm telling you, these enemies will swallow our schools. It's going to be a gangsterism properties. SOS schools, schools of specializations, can we recreate them? There are schools that are closed, they are no longer active. Can we make them at least schools for specialization, because of they are going to be gangster properties, vandalism, etc., and it's too expensive to lose those things. As we are saying all the time that education is the key that can change the world. Again, online admission. We had a problem, especially in Gauteng. There are kids until month end of January. They still haven't got spaces. Maybe can we just go into the drawing board once more and try maybe speak to the department, to the district official to go and teach the parents how to use it, because of there are parents who can use it. And there are parents who said, no, I did do the submission, but it takes me far away instead of where I wanted to my child to go to the school that that the school that we chose. And again, homeschooling. Can we consider homeschooling? Because of there are children that stays far from the schools. Maybe that system can be active in schools, so that we can, so that the child must get an education. So the last one is, what is BELA Act? It's a living organ in the education system. So if it's a living organ in the education system, can it be transparent? Let the heart beat and skip a beat, be the Valentine in our school business day, not only on the 14th of February, but every day. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm advised that can we look at what is critical? Because I thought we were about the BELA Act. So if you bring other issues, and we are told you need to be out of here in a few minutes' time. Let's take the next question.
Thank you very much. My name is Boitumelo Muilwa, a representative of Progressive Women's Movement and also a leader of the Women's League nationally. Let me say protocol observed and appreciate the presentation from all who have presented there. I'm not going to be long. I just want to zoom into what has been raised about the child-headed families. I think it's about time that we work together, whether it's different sectors, departments, and organizations, that we know that in social development, they have the way in which they are able to identify the child-headed families through their social workers. And of course, I know, being a teacher by profession, that In schools, there are social workers who are allocated schools. So I think it's about time that we collaborate. We must not work in silos. If we want really to address the issue of child-headed families, because we need to have that data from social development. Because even educators, they know the child-headed family because they are faced with those challenges every day. So I think if we can collaborate, work together, get the data, and all the organizations work together in terms of addressing the issue of child-headed families. I'm raising this because that is where we get problems of teenage pregnancy, where we get challenges of drugs. That's where I think the BELA bill will be able to assist us. And I think, Dr. Gwen, when you raised the issue of saying whether BELA Act, will be able to close the gap in terms of that child-headed families, I think we really need to focus on that and make sure that those kids are also
Okay. I'm Unkarabetsi Mankurwani from Gauteng Department of Education, Circuit Manager in one of the schools in Hammanskraal. I've got only 2 questions. One, clause number 2, section C, criminalizes any person who unlawfully and intentionally disrupts and disturbs or hinders school activity. I just want to know who is responsible to open such cases against such groups of people who are disrupting schools. The second one is, what plans are in place to ensure that that child who is in grade R now, currently in 2025, and taught in mother tongue, will continue with mother tongue up to university level? Thank you.
It's me.
It's a hijack, but it's fine.
Okay, thank you. All protocol observed. Mine is a question and a comment at the same time that, you know what, at schools, particularly the primary schools, as a former teacher, I find that we are faced with problems wherein parents, as Dr. Ramaphosa has said, that the parents are so young, they need skills themselves. So we find that we have those children at schools, and you find that there is no monitoring. As a teacher, you find that a child has just come to school without having washed herself. The mother is somewhere, is not at home, and the child is kept at home. So I just wish to see how does the Department of Education work in collaboration with the social development and at the same time with the Department of Health. Because as a teacher, at times you find that you go out of the classroom, you rush the child to the clinic, you take your own car because the child has been sent to school sick. Those things those are things that I wish they can be taken into consideration, particularly when this act is, as it is in process, it has been passed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cyril Ramaphosa, the provincial leadership of NEPTOS. Mine is on the issue of the BELA Act vis-a-vis the online system in Gauteng. Because currently where we are standing, it's heartening that we still have learners, I won't refer them as learners, children that are still at home. District is failing to place them. Principals are getting instruction from the circuit managers not to accept those learners. a learner is repeating a grade, want to relocate due to distance or due to families, what does the BELA Act say with regard to our children, those that are at home? The second part is the issue of the SGB. We have a problem as unions, we go and sit in those processes, but the SGBs are failing us. How can we hold the SGB accountable in terms of the BELA Act? Because SGBs, they go there, they appoint a person not based on that person has maybe the capacities, but the person get recommended because the person is from the school or the person has been working in the school for many years. And there is that, I think there was a report during the Mama Angie's term that shows that indeed there is an issue of selling of posts. How can we hold the SGB accountable in that regard? The last one was said by my leadership there, Tate Masondo, on the issue of overcrowding. What does the BELA Act, how is the BELA Act going to assist us? Because we had, if you come to Mamelodi now, we don't have a class of less than 60 learners. How is BELA Act going to assist us? Schools are not being built, and everybody's flocking into this province. The online system as well, it's failing us. So can you please assist us in terms of the BELA Act with what I've presented? Thank you very much.
You're the chairperson.
Good day, everyone. My name is Kabelo Mukoka. I'm in Internet Tshwane District, Tshwane South District. I have 3 questions. So my first question is, with this BELA Act, my supervisor always say education is a societal problem. So I believe that parents are not really educated in terms of what is happening with their children. So I'm asking, how do we get parents involved and be part of this implementation of this BELA Act and to support the Act? And again, how long will it take for to create educational resources that comply with this BELA Act requirements? Thank you.
I guess that was the last one. Sorry. You're bringing hijacks now.
Sorry. Dumela le kae? Nna lebitso la ka ke nna Khomotso Galushi. Ke tswa ko Sanko Civic. Question tja ka di 2 fela tje ke tlo botsishang ka tsona mo. Ke nyaka o tseba fela gore cause ke utlwe le bolela ka gore bana sontse ba ye sekolong early and ba khone go tseba go ngwala ba khone tseba language tja bona. But ge ke compare bana ba ba yang sekolong go grade R mo sekolong le bana ba yang go grade R go creche ga ba tshwane. Ngwana tlang go creche le ngwana leng go sekolong ba fapana. Ngwana tlang go creche o tla a tseba go kwala a tseba go dira dilo ka moka. Mara le mo sekolong ba tsena fro ba tswa ka 1 ba tlo kra ngwana a sa gone le ngwana grade 1 a sa gone ngwana kona sa ile thuta go grade 1. So ne ke gopela gore nkare go sekolong ba ka dira something yana gore at least dilo di khono ngwana ya grade 1 a grade 1 a tsebo ngwana because it's a problem. And ke tlo bolela ka issue engwe gore ke tla ke le Oliven ne re thusha district go ngwadisha bana ba sekolo re ba helper SSanko, but ke bana ba bantši ba tlile ba apply, but no re na le batho ba bantši ba ile gore ba tsene ka di classing. And when you go to the school to check the children ba bang ba ditse mo fase a ba khone le dula dikolo di tletse. So ke nyaka o tseba le thusha mo kae mo baneng ba ba dutse mo fase ba tlhokang ditulo tsa go ngwana ka raga dikolo. I thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Mohale. I'm the principal of Begarat Primary. Can we get clarity in terms of what the BELA bill says regarding undocumented illegal foreigners in relation to admission, in relation to fees, in relation to exemptions? Thank you very much.
Okay. Na ne ke kopa go botsisa thata ke botsisa ntlo ha ke botsisi kopile as such. Ke nna Catherine Makhubedu ke tla ko FBO. Ne ke botsisa ka bana ba rona ka gore bana ba ba haetso le re bona gore o ka re bana molao ba ya tshwenya go etsahalang. Ke lebeletse gore bana ba imetswe le bona. As Africans, re na le dilonyana tse ntšhi tse re di etsang ene re di rwesa bana ene bana ba tshwantse ba ye dikolong ba yo ithuta mara bana ba imetswe bana ba ya ke dingaka ene ba santse ba ba le ba banyane ke ba ko sekolong ba yo thwasa ba ya dikomeng ba kry different cultures even ko dikomeng ka gore a isa le taba ya circumcision fela ngwana le a le circumcised o ya komeng because go na le menyetlo e mengwe gore bana ba imetswe ba haetso rona batswadi ba bana he re lla ka the government but bana ba imetswa ke rona mo fatshe mo bana ba ya dikolong ba haetso nna I'm a pastor ko sekolong ko high school and then bana o kriye ngwana ha khone le o apara hempe ka mo hare go tletse ke di phita ke di thapo ke dilo tsotlhe ka mo hara ngwana o imetswe o apere oversize ya hempe mo hara sebaka ngwana wa hwella skolo a se itse medication e se mo fe eng ha ke against le di culture tsa batho mara ke re bana ko dikolong ba yetse education aba yela dio tse ntši ene he ba ya ba rwele merwalo e mentši e ba haetso le ra hore ka hore ke bana ba tlo khona bjang ka gore le wena o le motho mogolo when you go to education o tseya dilo tse dingwe wa di latlhanyana ko thoko you want to focus to education.
Okay, ma'am, we've
Thank
got
you.
Thank you. We're done. That guy up there never raised his hand. Okay, I believe it's the very, very last. We have been having too many last ones.
You can talk.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. My name is Olabio Shikoya. I'm speaking, I'm a legal consultant in Tony Okore Anthony. My question goes this way. I just want a clarity regarding the bully in the school. I think most of the bully in the school is the one that caused the violence in the school among the teachers and the learners. So what is the BELA Act is really going to do regarding that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. Let's start by greeting Dr. Ramaphosa. And let me just climb on the protocol that was established. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I happen to have this unfortunate responsibility to drive the BELA Act at the Department of Basic Education. It has been my baby from day one. And even in Parliament, that's was my responsibility to drive it and ensure that even in consultations, so the final product that you see is the product that we really negotiated in Parliament after taking your views. So I'm still continuing with that responsibility, that's why I'm here. How the chairperson gets instruction from Professor Mary Metcalf, I don't know. but it's part of my responsibility. And why the BELA bill is my responsibility is that I'm in charge of all district offices in the country, where circuit managers and subject advisors are, and those are the implementers of the BELA Act. I'm also responsible for all school principals in the country and the entire school management teams. So that's where this BELA bill is going to be implemented. And that's why I'm supposed to be giving you these responses. I just want to quickly deal with how do we move forward with the BELA Act. And that's what Dr. Ramaphosa wants us to understand. And let's clarify the issue of grade R. When we say grade R is a compulsory grade, what do you actually mean by that? We are saying every child needs to start schooling from grade R and not 1. It means now that we have an act, if a parent comes with a child next year and say this child has never been to school, ever, it means that child doesn't go to 1 but goes to R. And we're not saying grade R must be in a school at all cost. We're not saying that. Because you're saying schools are overcrowded, there's no space in a school. We're not saying close down all the centers and bring children to a classroom in a school called so-and-so primary school. What we are emphasizing is that children must be exposed to a curriculum. So there must be a curriculum that is followed. Whether this child is in a garage or in an independent sector, section of our community, whether it's in a crash, all those people must be given the curriculum to follow. So circuit managers that are here and all the officials, your responsibility is to find where these children are in the community. If they're in a community center, find them. If they are in a garage, find them, so that you identify the owners and the owners register so that you can hold them accountable for the delivery of a curriculum, irrespective of where these children are. So that's why we say grade R is compulsory. And there's nowhere in the act that says if you don't take your child to grade R, then you'll be facing penalties or you'll be arrested. There's nothing of that nature. All it's saying is that grade R children need to start school at the age of 4 when they're turning 5 by 30 June. When do we admit children to grade R? When they turn 5. The latest date is 30 June. There are challenges, especially with former modesty schools, that prefer children that are older in admission. So we're saying, don't rewrite the law. Grade R is for 5-year-olds. And in grade 1, there are already 6 in there. So schools that run empty sometimes take chances and enroll children that are younger. You find 3-year-olds there. You find, yes. So we're saying, don't, circuit managers, no underage children, and don't admit children that are older. Say, go and stay at home and grow up first. And we don't do that. So that is the issue. So we don't have vans and police that are going to move around and look for children that are not in a crash and arrest them. Let's understand that. The compulsory school going age, it's 6. What that means is that no 6-year-old must be anywhere else except being homeschooled or in a private school or in a school. So the child must be registered. But if the child is not registered at all, somebody quoted and say, how do you then enforce that these children go to school? The department must begin an engagement with the parents of the children that are not at school. Because there may be reasons. So the department must find ways in which to bring these parents on board to bring their children. This enforcement and the penalties kick in only when the department has consulted a parent and the parent refuses to send the child to school. That's when you can call 10111 for that matter. You can call 10111 if there is that neglect that we have been referring to, that this parent is getting drunk and is not taking care of the child, and that's when you bring social workers and all that, and the penalties can kick in there. Because it looks like anybody who's not taking a child to school will then go to jail when people have reasons, especially in our Ezlalini, for that matter. Find that there's no transport, there's nothing. You can't call 10-111. You've got to address the problem. It's only when you've addressed the problem and the parent refuses that you can then take the child, the parent, and make sure that, that the child attends school. There is this issue of resources. When are you going to put resources in grade R and so on? Remember, the reason why we put grade R as a compulsory grade is that teachers who teach grade R are not funded by the Department of Basic Education. Children who are in grade R are not given food by the Department of Basic Education. They are not getting books from the Department of Basic Education because there's no law to fund them. So the reason why we make it compulsory is that we're now saying as government, begin to include those learners in the post-establishment so that they can also benefit like grade 1s and the rest of the children. Now, the fact that we don't have it now is because there was no law. Now there's a law, we're beginning to say to the Minister of Finance, remember, if there are 30 grade R children, it means a teacher who's going to be paid by the state. So when people argue with us and say, you don't even have money, why are you introducing grade R? How will we get money if grade R is not in the law? So we start with the law first in order to do that. The act is based on the Constitution. It's based also on all the treaties that we sign as a country. You know, the UN, the Africa Charter, leave no child behind, make education compulsory, make sure that there is human right culture. You know, this is what carries the act. That is why when we talk about the code of conduct, we say it must take into account the diverse cultural beliefs and religious observances of people that are in there. The issue of the code of conduct came in, but what you need to understand is who develops a code of conduct. This is when we make education a societal issue completely. The practice now is that the SMTs will draw a code of conduct and call parents and give them and say that is the code of conduct of the school. What you get in the act says the code of conduct must be developed in consultation with the parents of the children in that school. So if you do that, you're not going to have a code of conduct that says don't bring in your red wool when the child is an Indian child who is a Hindu. You're not going to say to those young adolescents, go and shave with your razor and become clean when you are in matric, when the child is a Muslim who needs to have a little bit of beards in there. You're not going to say to a Zulu child, don't bring ispandla. So the reason why we're getting all these challenges is that these code of conduct are developed elsewhere and enforced into the children, and they rebel. How do you say to a child, I don't want you to bring those dreadlocks, when the rest of the family members are on dreadlocks? How do you do that? That's why we say it must take into account those religious differences and observances. I know, Pastor, you are very much into the space, but the more you explain, the more we understand why certain schools are going to be regarded as discriminatory. Because you are beginning to identify those things that I, who is not a Christian, who believes in having some beards in my hand, and then you'll say, Uresangwana. Because your belief system and my belief system are not the same. And I normally say to schools, if you come up with these type of discriminatory codes of conduct, if you are to face the Human Rights Commission, what are you going to say and what will they say to you? If you are to go to the Equality Court, what are you going to say?
And I'm saying to schools, principals, and circuit managers, the more you come up with too many regulations and laws that you cannot implement, you're going to spend a lot of time dealing with nonsense instead of getting into the curriculum. You've got to stand at the gate every day and look at how long your hair is. Please go and cut it. And that time is gone. Then you have disciplinary hearings that you came in with hairs that were not tight. You're just wasting time. So that's why we say the BELA Act says deal with the parents, let them assist you. If it's a high school, the learners themselves must be part and parcel of the determination of the code of conduct in that school. The issue of bullying, which is coming up, who's really responsible for these things? Because we keep saying the school, the department, what are you doing? When we say our schools are, we call it a societal matter. We put in a school governing body there. There are teachers in there. The only problem is that the concept of school governing body is not well understood by majority of the people. School governing bodies are not parents. Let's understand that. School governing bodies are composed of teachers, parents, the principal, the public servants who work in there, and the children in that school. So as a department, we're giving you that space to then design how this institution is going to be run. So immediately there are drugs in a school, you carry your hands in your head and say, department, where are you? So when there are drugs, it's not because there's lack of laws in the country. There are laws in the country. What needs to happen is that somebody must apply and implement the law. And how we try and simplify it in the Act, issues of drugs, is that we have tightened the definition of the word drug. When you look at the primary SASA, it defines drug as something illegal. And it says a child might be charged with misconduct for having illegal drugs. So we remove the word illegal because not all drugs are illegal. So if you go to a court of law and you want to talk about illegal drugs, then your children are going to be drinking cough mixtures and mix them and get drunk. So you can't charge them because it's not illegal. They might be buying benzene and glue. It's not illegal. So when you go to the Act says anything that is stupefying, that has a psychological effect onto the child and physical effect is a drug, irrespective of whether it's legal or not. Dacha may not be illegal if you use it at home. But if you use it at home and come to school high, then we charge you for being high because you have used a legal drug at home, but the effect here is now affecting us, then we charge you with misconduct. And that's what needs to be in the code of conduct. So people who need to deal with these things are the school governing bodies, because you are the people who have been given the power to discipline, to expel a learner if definitely the learner is endangering other learners. So you can't go and run in the department. And if there are weapons that are brought in there, there is SAPS that you need to consult with because you can't be dealing with that type of thing in your institution. But it's your laws that run the school and not the department's laws for that matter. Your schools of specialization, what the Act says is that every community has the right to decide about the nature of the school in the community. It also says the department can also decide on converting certain schools and make them schools of specialization. So you can't just see it as a community. If you want a school of specialization, it's your responsibility to knock at the department's door and say that school needs to be converted. That is what you find in the Act. I'm not sure how to deal with child-headed families and all that, because sometimes we think the BELA Act is going to answer to all challenges and all problems of the country, whereas we were just looking at certain sections of the South African Schools Act and look at them. Hence, we'll get questions like, when there are disruptions, let's appreciate that this Act is beginning to say, those who disrupt schools need to be taken to book. Immediately you want to fight government over water and electricity, the first thing you do is to run to a school and you shut it down. And most of the people who shut down schools are SGB members. When they are at loggerheads with circuit managers, the first thing that they do, they lock the gate, and they even stand at the gate and say, "Ahutse far today." So you're a circuit manager. Here are guys at the gate who are saying nobody gets in. Then call 10-111. So you can't say who opens up a case. Yes, you are a circuit manager, you have a CES, you've got your director there, you've got the whole hierarchy of the department up to the HOD. All you're interested in is somebody, can you open a case and have these people arrested for disrupting schools? Because the law allows you. Some people will say, yeah, but they've been disrupting schools and they were not arrested. Yes, there was no law. So if you went to the police station and said they've closed the gate, the police wouldn't do anything. But now there's a law that says act on it as a policeman. We're trying by all means to ensure that there is mother tongue teaching. We're trying by all means to say, let's extend mother tongue teaching beyond grade 4. And that's what the department is trying to do. But what the Act is saying, besides those, because those are curriculum issues, it's saying, communities, you have the right to introduce a language in an area where you live, provided there are enough children that have to do that language. It is you who work with your SGBs to say, now we want Setswana here, because the demographic have changed. The department also have that authority to come and knock at the school and say, we see a lot of these children here who are Zulu speaking. I think you need to consider introducing a language. Rustenburg needs to introduce isiXhosa Americana because there are too many Xhosas who work in the mine. So it means those Xhosas in there, according to this act, need to encourage the department to introduce isiXhosa. But if nothing happens, the department in Rustenburg must go to Marikana schools and say, you are introducing isiXhosa. That is what is in the act. But what is important is, how do you do it? You don't come as a department and then with guns blazing and say, this is it. There are consultation processes that are in the act. And it includes consulting even the communities around. It is only, I'm just starting. It is only when you have done with the consultation and you meet deadlocks that as a department, then the decision of the head of department becomes final. The challenges that I'm having now with admissions is that since people were told that the head of department has a final say in admissions, we're beginning to see circuit managers writing letters to schools asking them to admit this list of children and all that and that. That is not in line with the act. The act says engage, communicate, bring these two schools that check which one has space in which one, communicate with the SGBs, and if you deadlock, your word is final. So don't start with the final word of instructing. You start with the word of saying, I see you still have about 10 spaces in here. I think we need to bring more children in there. And if they refuse when the spaces are there, then your HOD can do that. So that is the problem with admissions. But other things are not in the bill, which you ask in the act, which you are asking me. What happens with online registration? The children that are sitting on the schools are overcrowded and all that. In my world, there are schools that are deliberately overcrowded. When this school is overcrowded, the next one is empty. It talks to our inefficiencies as a department to balance it. How do you allow this principal to over-enroll when there are empty schools around? Circuit managers, that's your headache. Then there are schools that You can talk to circuit manager. Remember, they all report to me. So there are schools that will be overcrowded because there are no other schools around. So that is acceptable. But the answer is, let's all schools be overcrowded. There shouldn't be one that is not. That is when the power of the HOD comes in. This chairperson doesn't want me to answer the questions you asked me. Undocumented, that's the one that you're interested in. Then I can sit down. Okay. I can't answer this unless I go deep. Those who go to church will say, go deeper. There are two pieces of legislation that controls that. One is the Immigration Act of Home Affairs. And it specifically says any principal who admits undocumented learners is liable to a fine of about 10,000 rands per learner admitted without documents. That is the Immigration Act. Then the South African Schools Act says we follow the basic right of education. Every learner needs to receive education. Then the two acts clash. Then for many, many years, we have been talking to the Department of Home Affairs around that thing, and we never got to understand one another. They just said, our priority is the security of the country. So that is important. Then comes the Eastern Cape, who then decides that all these undocumented learners are not going to get nutrition. They are not going to get books. Because they are undocumented, they are not in our list. Then comes Section 27, and all the human rights bodies take the department to court and say, you're discriminating. The answer was, this Immigration Act is unconstitutional. The one that says, charge the principal, is unconstitutional. The court says, the basic right to education covers everybody in the Republic. Once you jump into the Republic, the basic right to education covers you. It's not selective. It doesn't have a rider that says basic right to education if provided or notwithstanding, it puts a full stop. Which means every child that is in here gets the basic right to education. So those in Home Affairs were told to go and change that law. Now, this act, the court instructed us that your job as education is to educate children. You are not Home Affairs. You don't know how an immigration document looks like, how an asylum seeker document looks like, so stop asking for them because you don't know them. Your job is to teach. So every child that is in the Republic needs to go to school and be taught. It helps us by keeping them out of the street and put them in the classroom where we can manage them and where we know the parents and all that. So that is the issue, that if you are a principal and you send a child back, it's a problem. I'm closing with this. There are no two laws in this country, which you call the South African Schools Act and the Basic Laws Amendment Act. So I'm asking Dr. Ramaphosa, the law that runs education in this country is called the South African Schools Act. The BELA Act came in to replace certain sections of the South African Schools Act. So you need to take these sections that are replaced and throw them inside the South African Schools Act. Then when you talk, you then say the South African Schools Act as amended. Don't say the BELA Act says. Says the South African Schools Act, Section 2 as amended says. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think we are still having to have more of an engagement about these undocumented issues because they actually flood our school premises. And I'm interested with this undocumented foreign nationals. And I think, Dr. Gwen, it is not in the schools, it's also in the hospital. Is it right? Is it right foreigners come in our doorsteps and come and really flood and then use our own Bill of Rights, you know, for their own advantage? Let me pause. It's something that we should be able to engage progressive citizens. So you must follow us. I'm pausing now. I'm going to ask Ntate Mulamu just to give a vote of thanks as a progressive citizen leader. And we really want to say that, Prof. Mpine, all those who have attended here, it is on your shoulder. And all these people who are seated here, all these professors, their signatures, continuous professional development. We don't want to be having irresponsible leaders in our society. This was actually the important issues that we discussed. Now we have opened another one, the issues of Immigration Act. What does it say? I thank you. Over to you.
Good afternoon, and all protocol observed. We've run out of time. Mine is just to give a vote of thanks on the discussions on the BELA Act. Honorable guests, distinguished speakers, and esteemed participants, all that has been from the citizens, professionals, you know, principals, and all that have been here, I think this was a success. It is with great gratitude that I stand before you and deliver the vote of thanks at the conclusion of our insightful discussions on the BELA Act. I tried to summarize quite a lot of things and important things that has been said, but I think it's a take-home for everyone. And as we going to do these discussions in the future, to close them. So I extend my appreciation to all the esteemed speakers, panelists, for their invaluable contribution. Your expertise, your perspective have enriched our understanding on the BELA Act. Its implications and what is critical, the way forward. Your dedication and sharing knowledge and engaging in meaningful discussion is truly commendable. I like to say this, I quote, education is an inoculation towards destruction, close quote. If we invest in education to our children, to our citizens, this is critical. Homes have got big screens. You look into houses, how many books are there? Kids are not taught to read. But I know developing languages is very critical. We need to have books written in our own language. To Medebi, the organizers, the university for providing this place, we thank you. And all the hard work that has gone through into this thing, your efforts bringing us together for this important dialogue have not gone unnoticed. To all the participants, whether joining, like the minister was virtual, and all being here, we thank you. On YouTube, we thank you very much. Lastly, we extend our gratitude to all stakeholders, including government representative, educators, community members, for their continued interest and dedication to, critical issues. It is through such collaboration or collaborative efforts that we can work towards informed decision and meaningful change. As we conclude, let us carry forward this insight gained today. We should not stop here. We should, engage in this thing and remain committed to constructive dialogue and action. Thank you very much, and God bless.
I just want to say that Professor Mpine, she have invited you for finger lunch. That is from her pocket. And we are going to request the panelists, the speakers, to have a nice photo shoot. And I have posed the issue of the Immigration Act. That is, and I'm going to invite you. And then we should be able to discuss about it. I thank you. Siyabonga. Lunch is served on the foyer, and then